Hi, my name is Addario, and I'm here with the Focus on Watchung television show. And once again, we're going to let you know about all the current events in Watchung and what is happening. And actually, quite a bit is happening in Watchung, believe it or not, in this small little tiny borough with just over 5,000 residents. There's quite a bit of buzz of current events and changes, and a new police station and a new mall going in, and changes in the lake. And with me to tell you all about these changes and events and that's happening in Watchung is our mayor, Mayor Anthony Addario, and he's going to do, hopefully, most of the talking and letting you know about what's happening in Watchung. So welcome, Mayor Addario, to our show.
Good morning.
And let's start talking about something that's a little bit controversial, which is this Watchung Square Mall that everybody seems to be talking about, but there's lots of information but no facts, really.
Well, I don't know if everybody's talking about it, but certainly we're concerned. And as you well know, the history started about 5-6 years ago with the rezoning of the property at the former Lockheed property.
And where is that property?
On Route 22. It's on the border of North Plainfield and Watchung.
And this is where the police station had been in a temporary residence.
Yes, temporary quarters. When we had the fire back in '91, we located the police down in 22, but they've since moved out of there a little over a year and a half ago in order to tear down the buildings, to clean the decontamination that existed under the Lockheed plant. And that's all been done. It's Lockheed has been a very responsible tenant or landlord, rather. They've cleaned up the site to residential standards, and we've gotten writing from the state DEP. Everything is fine. It's just a question of when will Watchung Square start building. It depends on the court. As you well know, or most of the citizens know, the planning board, after 2 years of hearing, granted preliminary and final approval to Watchung Development in Watchung Square. And we were then taken to court by North Plainfield and two citizens, one from North Plainfield, one from Watchung.
And why were we taken to court?
Well, because they deemed it to be arbitrary and capricious, all of the rulings that we made, all of the decisions that the planning board made over the years. It took a year to go through the court in Somerset, and this past January, the courts ruled in our favor, saying that everything was done according to expert planning, all of the things, all the precautions.
And what court was this?
In Somerset.
In Somerset. Which judge was it?
Judge Victor Stalfi.
Okay.
They then, the plaintiffs decided to appeal the decision. So it's now in the next court level, and we're waiting for a hearing to come up. We're hopeful that they'll expedite it sometime this early summer, but we're not sure of that at this point.
Now, there's been an appeal done on the mall regarding whether this mall can go through, or what is the appeal?
That's the appeal. The plaintiffs are saying that the mall is too big, the traffic is going to be horrendous, the runoff is going to be catastrophic. All of the things that you can think about, they've picked on everything. And
I'm just curious, why would somebody want to get in the way of progress or business?
Well, it's very simple. It's the old syndrome, not in my backyard. North Plainfield is very concerned about their citizens that live along 22, the traffic, the water runoff, the noise, pollution, all of the safety, security, all the things that traffic bring into an area. And but we've shown it to be the prime place to put a retail mall is on Route 22, because we in Watchung and our planners have told us that Route 22 is the retail capital of Central Jersey, from Union down to Somerville. And it's the appropriate place to put it, and that's where it belongs.
Well, it seems actually a little bit silly if you think about it, because there's so many businesses on Route 22, and here's one piece of land which basically is not being utilized in an efficient manner and can be utilized, and it's not going to be any more disturbing than the rest of the businesses there.
We feel very confident that the courts are going to prevail in our favor. It's just going to take time and cost a lot of money, and this is the bottom line as far as the opponents are concerned. They just want to stall it. There's been some negotiations going on with North Plainfield, but I'm not very hopeful at this point that anything is going to come of it. Now, we're not negotiating it, but the developer is, Fidelity Development Corporation out of Millburn, who are the developers that are going to take care of this.
Now, I understand, my understanding from Fidelity, talking to them, is that, for example, they don't have there is, the opportunity to lease space there, but you have to have at least 20,000 square feet in order to lease the space. So they're looking at some pretty big change going into this mall.
The ordinance reads that you have to have three stores of 100,000 square feet or more. Okay, and that would be Home Depot's going to be there. There's a Target department store coming in.
I heard Borders might be going in there.
Borders, yeah. There's a lot of medium-sized stores going in. There's a movie theater, Cineplex, 16 movie theaters going into one Cineplex. And there's a number of other stores. But the anchor stores are Home Depot, Edwards, and Target. Those are the big stores on that. We think it's a perfect fit. It belongs there. The other aspect of it is, what do you do with a piece of property that sits on a highway, retail, commercial, if you don't put commercial property there? And it scares me to death when I think of the alternative. If this developer ever dropped out and decided that he didn't want to go ahead anymore, it would then become subject to vacant land. Vacant land in the eyes of the state means that you can then make it residential. Residential means apartments. And on 90 acres of land, what would that do? 1,000, 1,500 apartments?
There would be more traffic that could be less controlled, and
well, it would be that aspect of it, plus the number of children going to school. We couldn't handle that size of the residential development. So that bothers me at this point. And I don't know that many of the opponents understand that phase of what we're going through, as opposed to saying, well, just it's too big, don't build anything there. Well, the Lockheed has a right to sell their property, and they have a right to develop it based on whatever the zoning calls for. And the zoning calls for retail, commercial, and that's the appropriate place for it.
And when we talk about zoning for retail, commercial, and say a business like the Watchung Square Mall going in, it also, the benefits for the Watchung residents are a reduction in taxes.
Well, absolutely. See, it's a two-sided story. If you put a mall there, the ratables will far exceed whatever it costs you to support that mall in police protection or anything else. If you don't put a mall there, then you have residential. Residential will cost you. There's a drain. Whatever ratables you bring in, the cost far exceeds the amount of money you bring in.
Because if they had all those new students entering Bayberry School, for example, you'd have to expand the school. We already have an expansion going on at Bayberry in terms of the class sizes for the next year's kindergarten.
Well, yeah, the student population is increasingly. I think there's a younger group of families moving into Watchung with youngsters as the older residents either retire or relocate to Florida or whatever. So we're seeing a swing in that. But again, that would be devastating.
Yeah, so let's talk about the two sides here. We have the Watchung Square Mall. We have the people who are for the mall. And then we have the people against the mall. And you're saying the people against the mall are basically North Plainfield residents? Well, or what is the group or the coalition
there
against the mall?
Is a group called the Minutemen. They're the residents that live along Richard Way. And I have a genuine concern for their thoughts, because, again, it will affect them to some degree. There's no doubt about it. But there's a lot of safeguards being put into this thing. And there are also residents in Watchung that object to it or think the scale is too big. I think they're in the minority. I know they're in the minority based on feedback that I get back day in and day out from the people that I've talked to. And those that are more vocal about it are those that are in the immediate vicinity, on East Drive, Edgemont Road, Johnson Drive up above. Those are the ones that have been very vocal. And I share their concerns that, yes, they would rather it stay the way it was, leave it as pristine woods and don't touch anything. But it's not doable at this point. And I've talked to a lot of the residents. I'm aware of their concerns.
So if we were to find a middle ground, say the mall got built, the concerns of the other residents or the concerns of the opposing group actually sort of forms it tempers the plan, so that basically maybe there is a middle ground where their concerns can be reflected in the plans for the traffic. And if they weren't there, then maybe things would go in a different direction. But I guess what you're doing now is sort of working on a compromise where you're appreciating their concerns.
We did, in the approval process with the planning board, we listened to the experts, our experts, the opponents' experts from North Plainfield and the different residents. We listened to the real estate people that have talked to us, our planners, and in direction. And we put in a number of safeguards. For example, they didn't want the movie theater at the base of the mountain. And we moved it 3 or 4 times, and they didn't want East Drive or Gray Street to be a through street to go all the way through, because then it would.
So you're recognizing that.
We did all those. We have about 60-some items that were part of the resolution, and it was from 75 acres, we increased it to 90 acres, and we put a buffer zone at the base of the mountain, about 6 acres of land that the developer, will turn over to the borough in lieu of us giving them East Drive and Gray Street so that they can border on that. We've taken a lot of precautions. We've got bus stops. There's lights on the highway that will provide for pedestrian crossing, railings along the divide along the highway so people can't jump over the railing, the safeguards. We've got parking for bus people that want to go to New York or wherever they're going. All of these things were taken into consideration at the time, and we think the developer has been very agreeable with anything we've wanted from him. There'll be less water runoff after it's built than there is today with no building there, because he's got retention basins that are being put in. These are all the safeguards that we insisted, and he's accepted, and that's the plan that's before the courts right now.
So in a lot of ways, the opponents have played a very positive role, and maybe there's going to be some coming of terms where everybody can be happy and everybody can agree.
Well,
we hope that they're not so stubborn that they're looking at it as a win and lose situation. It could be a win-win.
I know it's a win-win situation, but some of the opponents will never concede that this is what should be there, and it's a practical thing to do. It fits like a glove as far as I'm concerned, the whole project. And North Plainfield, I understand their concern. Our residents, I've talked to many of them. I share their concerns. Sure, it's going to intrude upon a little bit on their quality of life, but it's the best thing for Watchung, the overall good for the town of Watchung, as opposed to little pockets here and there.
And it's creating jobs, too. A lot of these residents might have teenage kids that are going to benefit from a job that's very close by.
It provides jobs. It provides shopping close to home in many aspects. Instead of going to Home Depot in Union or in South Plainfield, you just go down to Watchung. And that's only one of the steps. There's so many other things that go into it. I'm looking forward to the day that we break ground there, and I'm optimistic that it will happen within the next year.
So what's our time frame in terms of court dates now? What are we looking at?
Well,
so that we can pay attention to the newspapers.
Well, again, they're all guesses and estimates at this point, but we're hopeful that something will happen this summer, with the courts, either dropping the case or hearing it, expediting it, so that the developer and Lockheed can get well on their way selling the property, developer can build, and we can realize some of the benefits that will come from this in terms of ratables. It's cost the Borough of Watchung a lot of money, legal fees in court. You might say, well, it's only time. Well, time is legal. We've spent probably about $60,000 in legal fees in the last year, and it's ongoing. Our lost ratables are probably into the hundreds of thousands of dollars we'd be collecting right now. And it's unfortunate, the legal system works as it is, and they've got a right to defend their position, meaning the opponents. But hopefully it'll happen.
We have to take a little break now, so we'll continue talking about this after our break. And stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Need algebra, geometry, and calculus to get this job. Now, if that doesn't convince you to take math courses, I don't know what will. Call Mackie. We'll tell you what you need to do.
They broke the law on every turn. They had no restraint. They were rebels without a clue.
What's wrong with you guys?
Oh, compound fractures, contusions.
No, I mean, why no safety belt?
It's just what dummies do.
Oh, yeah? Well, this is what I do.
Busted for not wearing safety belts.
Hey, pal, it's the law.
Police are ticketing across the nation. Buckle your safety belt.
Hi, this is Daria Biernat with Focus on Watchung. Once again, I'm here with Mayor Addario, and we're talking about the number of current events that are happening in Watchung right now. We just finished discussing about the Watchung Square Mall And I also want to introduce another topic, which is the Mount Laurel that the mayor would like to speak about. So welcome again, Mayor Addario.
Yeah, thank you again. We have an obligation to the state, which is called Mount Laurel, or COAH, Council on Affordable Living, that was passed back in the 70s. Our commitment in 1988 was that we had to build 120 homes, low-cost and moderate homes. And we've been living through that plan, and then another one came out in 1994, our second phase of that. You put the two phases together, now we are obligated to supply 169 affordable homes.
And how did they come up with that number?
Well, the state comes up with much larger numbers, but in our negotiation with the state, we got it down to that. And there's many ways of meeting that obligation, but one of the plans was, and we got taken to court by the Zelinsky family, which owns the property on Route 22 next to Lockheed or next to Homeowners Haven. They got permission to build 60 low-cost housing. And understand, when you build 60 low-cost housing, you then are allowed to build marketed homes. And there's a ratio of 5 to 1. So if you build 60 low-cost, you have a market of 300 homes you have to build. They were granted that permission in 1990. The Carlton industry went bankrupt and they never built it. Well, now they're before the planning board. That's being heard right now. The residents of Watchung that are concerned about putting 300 apartments on the highway have a right to be concerned, but we also have an obligation to the courts. So now that's being heard before the Watchung Planning Board. The next meeting is June 2nd. It's a series of meetings, probably take 6 or 7 months. They want to build 300 units in Watchung, and they've got a right to based on the court. Now, what the planning board is going to do at this point, I don't know. I can't speak to that because I'm a voting member on the planning board and I don't want to get involved. We have to hear the case. But that's only part of it. The other is we can transfer half of our units out to other towns, and we've done that. And we've also got what they call rehabs. You can rehab some of the units in town, and we're in the process of doing that at this point. So that's all encompassing, and I wish the residents would be aware of the Mount Laurel obligation we have. It's not something the town volunteer to do. All towns in New Jersey have an obligation to do something like that. And
Mount Laurel obligation, just to reemphasize that word obligation, it means that every municipality within the state of New Jersey has an obligation to provide low-income housing to people who would like to live in the town. And this gives, on the positive side, it gives people who cannot afford to live in Watchung, and most people can't because the average house price is about $450,000, the opportunity to send their children to Bayberry School, for example.
yes, that's part of it.
That's probably the theory behind Mount Laurel.
Well, most of them turn out to be apartments or condos, as the case may be. And they're starter homes for a lot of young couples that are starting out in life, so it serves both purposes at this point. But it puts a burden on the town when you put 300 units up overnight, and you increase the school population by 100 students. That's going to happen, and I don't know that we're prepared to do that at this point.
And not only that, but I guess it ties in even with the fire department and the rescue squad and all those other obligations, because as we've been reading in the newspaper, it seems like there's just been a lot of condo fires and apartment fires. When you have houses that are clustered together, you can't predict what your neighbor's going to be doing, whether they're going to leave that stove on or the iron on or whatever. And then once one goes, they all go. So you have sort of an obligation to increase also your safety factors too.
There's a drain on the volunteers, be it firemen or the rescue squad. And whenever you have a higher density, you're more prone to have accidents. You're more prone. There's more people. There's more children, and things do happen. And of course, it's a drain on the police department and drain everybody else. But that's part of, I guess, our society, that we have to provide that service. But we're optimistic that we'll be able to build something there on the highway that will satisfy the courts and not really unduly harm Watchung at this point.
We're lucky in Watchung because we are sort of set on a mountain, and it's a very rural environment still, and yet we have 22 that belongs to Watchung, where we can have a lot of the commerce and the rateables, and we can also fulfill these obligations.
Well, again, traffic is a big ointment in town because we're at crossroads between 78 and 22, and so we've got serious problems with traffic, which we never had years ago. And it's not our population, but it's people traveling through to get to New York City, the Newark Airport, using Route 78 or going to work up through the hills or wherever. And we're dealing with some of that with the Somerset County Road Department. I'm dealing with the DOT on Plainfield Avenue and Hillcrest, and also with Diamond Hill, trying to make that into a major interchange at this point. So to relieve the traffic in Watchung.
Let's talk about another topic. The police apparently have broken ground, and they started their new police station. And where is that going to be located?
On Somerset Street, and those folks that have been driving up Somerset Street have seen that mound of dirt there for the last year. That's slowly disappearing, and they've already put the footings in a couple of weeks ago. We should have a new police building this time next year.
That's
hopefully.
wonderful.
And the courthouse will be down there also.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't realize this. What are they going to do with the present courthouse?
Well, we'll use that for our council chambers as we do every day, but the courthouse was inadequate. You cannot handle the number of court people that come in every day or once a week and do our normal business with all of the other residents in town. So we've decided that, and the court belongs with the police station. It ties
How
in.
big is the police station?
It's 16,000 square feet in total. 3,000 feet will belong to the court. Because when you bring prisoners in from Somerville, you have to have some security, and we don't have it as it sits right now. They're brought in through the front door, they're in shackles, and it's not fair to the other residents, to the other patrons of the courts. So this will have a salary for all of the modern day things that are mandated by the judicial system.
It's interesting because since I've lived in Watchung, which is not a very long time, maybe 8 years, but we've gone from the older building, I forget the name of that building, the Texier building, which is now restored, beautifully restored, I have to say, in the center of the circle, and that's where the police used to be, to now they were down at Lockheed, now they're in trailers, and then they're going to have a beautiful new facility. So we're really the town of Watchung is really going forward in terms of its facilities and its...
It's something that's been a long time coming. The police department were inadequate facilities in the Texier building. It was just an old house that we moved them into about 20 years ago or something like that. And they outlived that long before the fire took place there. And we've been talking about a police station back in the early 80s to do something. But again, other priorities come up and you kept putting it on the back burner. And then in the late 80s, we finally decided we needed a police station.
A lot has been coming into fruition, and we have only a couple minutes left, but I'd like to also mention the Watchung Lake.
Yeah.
It's filled up now, which probably poses a problem because of all the rain, but that lake is turning out to be beautiful.
Yeah. The lake gets filled quite frequently now since it's been raining as it is, but we cannot keep it full because there's a drain pipe that's opened all the time. That should be done within sometime this month, within the next 2 or 3 weeks. The spillway is done. The water was flowing over it. The only part that has to be done right now is the landscaping, which we'll do on a periodic basis. And the earthen part of the dam has to have what they call a blanket put over it. And that's either a stone blanket or some kind of synthetic material, which is in the planning stages with the state and our engineer consultant. So as soon as that's resolved, we'll have an earthen blanket on that. We'll have benches. We'll have a gazebo up there on a little island. All of the niceties that will make it a very passive place to sit and enjoy the waters, read, have a bite to eat or a cup of coffee.
A lot of people, I'm out there every morning and I see there's a sort of a contingency of people who walk and run and ride around that lake. In fact, I measured it on my car. If anybody's interested, that entire path one time around the lake is a mile. So it makes a nice mile track for people who are involved in sports. And the lake is just, it makes Watchung. Everybody thinks of Watchung as that lake.
It identifies Watchung, and that's why we purchased it some 10, 15 years ago, because it was almost going to be developed, it was going to be sold, and we decided that we needed the lake like we did Best Lake in 1965 or thereabouts. It identifies the town of Watchung, and we're proud that we bought it, we're happy we bought it, and I think most of the residents share our enthusiasm for it. We're going to have some kind of a celebration probably in September, a ribbon cutting ceremony, call it whatever you want. It's something that will acknowledge what we've done there and the people can get to enjoy it.
And once again, in the last couple of minutes of the show, I wanted to mention that most of the people in Watchung who are involved with the community, with the rescue squad, with the fire department, and the mayor are all volunteers. Our mayor is a volunteer, and as you can see, he knows quite a bit about what's going on. He's involved day to day in all the negotiations, in the planning board, and meeting with the attorneys and going to court. So we have to appreciate the volunteerism in Watchung, and we've had our Pride in Watchung Days where we recognize the volunteerism, and I hope that people continue to go out and volunteer to make this a better community. The rescue squad, once again, I want to mention, is looking for volunteers. They are having their drive right now for funds, and this is something Mayor Addario's wife is very involved with, is the rescue squad. So in the last minute, I think you can invite people to volunteer and give, you know?
Well, I tell them to please join us because there are so many volunteers. There's over 500 volunteers in town, but there are certain groups that are hurting because, again, they are the ones that are called on every day. The rescue squad is hurting for day volunteers. The fire department certainly needs volunteers to service the needs of the town. But again, by and large, we do survive on a day-in and day-out basis with volunteers. And I'm proud of all of them. And again, I consider the council volunteers myself. We're not politicians. I am not a politician, despite what people might say or do, because I'm there to just service the needs of the people. I meet with the PTO and the senior citizens and the Board of Education. Any group, residents have a little gathering and they want me over the house to talk about whatever's going on in Watchung, and I'll do that. So I welcome any invitation to any affair. This Saturday I'll be over at the Warren Township Elks picnic for the handicapped children. So I'm at your disposal, the residents of Watchung, really.
Well, that's wonderful, and thank you very much for appearing on the show and filling everybody in what's happening with Watchung, and I hope that you all appreciate this information. Thank you very much, and I look forward to doing another show. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.